Hello, welcome to another episode of Lessons from a Podcaster. Today, here with me, Andrew. Welcome, Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Sarah Joe. Thanks for having me, and glad to have a chance to chat with you today.
A little bird told me that once you did a live while bleeding. Is that
Uh,
true?
that is actually true. I was shaving and rushing to get on my live, so I was on time, but didn't realize I had nicked my ear. So, it kept bleeding, and I wiped it off, and then it would bleed more. And,
Oh,
but I made it through the show, and that was one of our most popular shows up to that date. So.
how did you handle that? How do you manage that? I know that in your podcast you have guests normally. Like, what I don't know. How can one take care of such a situation while live and people watching you?
Well, I mean, definitely, um, people could see it, but I
Yeah.
just have it was a short little bit of blood, but then it would start to pool. So I would just have a napkin and sort of wipe off my ear, and then, it'd start dripping down and I'd wipe it off again. So,
That's crazy. So you do a live show that then turns into a podcast. Can you tell us in like 30 seconds what is your podcast about?
okay. Leadership Live at 8:05, talking small business. There's so many things that business owners need to do to move their business forward, and they can only do it based on their ability to lead. So what we do is we help them to learn how to be better leaders by hearing from guests who are successful entrepreneurs and business leaders.
Okay. Really interesting. It's like my or similar to my podcast. I can see that you're also passionate about entrepreneurship, which is nice. So that's really cool. It's a podcast similar to mine or my own heart, which is entrepreneurship, and I'm really passionate about. When did you start?
It's been 3.5 years now. So
Wow.
pretty much every single week for 3.5 years. We probably missed 4 shows, but that was because of holidays. So we put
Right.
on. So it's been a great experience. We've got almost 200 episodes.
Amazing. Why did you decide to start a podcast?
I think that number one, I've been coaching, consultant, training entrepreneurs and business owners for over 15 years. Worked with over 1,000 business owners, so
Wow.
I've learned a lot. I focus in the New York, New Jersey area, but I've written some books, and my goal is to expand my reach regionally, nationally, internationally over the next few years. And having a podcast or live stream podcast is a great um, tool to create good content and really be able to help share valuable insights and information with entrepreneurs and business owners all over.
Hmm. Does it also help with your business? Can it be like a lead magnet?
It can be a lead magnet, um, but some of the other ways that it really helps with my business is, number one, my communication skills. From where I
Right.
started to where I am now, it's amazing. I'm comfortable. Wasn't comfortable in the beginning. My network. Most of my guests come from their podcast agents. So, meeting a lot of new people who are business people who've done great stuff.
Hmm.
So that's been really positive. And then just, content on my social media. I was just invited to be a expert contributor on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So they gave me the badge. So
Nice.
really do a lot of content, and
Yeah.
that's helped to contribute to that.
LinkedIn is it's really good social network. I think it was kind of um I don't know, it was kind of in this numb state for a while, but it seems that now it's really picking up. Is it your main network at the moment?
Yeah, LinkedIn's always been my main network because if you're a business owner, you really need to be there.
Hmm.
And someone's going to do business for you. They're going to look you up, and that's where they're going to look you up. So
Yeah,
being
totally.
visible there, and it's free advertising. You can put your
Yeah.
message.
Yeah,
So
yesterday I don't want to lie to you. I don't really remember the numbers, but I was watching an interview,
mhm.
and um and she said that LinkedIn has around, I think, 130 million active users per day, and from all of those, 5%, only 5%, are active, content creators.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of space there for content creators to uh, repurpose their content, write posts, write really good engaging content, and probably it will, if it's good, it will get better reach than on other social networks like Instagram or Twitter. Now my question is, why live? Because it's such, I don't know, it, I can imagine, just by sometimes doing interviews like this, I feel a bit nervous, right? So but then I can edit, so I'm always, I can relax because I know, okay, if something is not right, I can always edit. Live, you don't have that, you cannot do that, right? You cannot edit. So why live? Why do you prefer that way?
I mean, I kind of like the energy and the flexibility. Um, when you have an audience and they're interacting as well, you don't know what the show's going to be, but it makes
Right.
it adds to it. And then just we don't have to worry about editing. We just go for it. And I'm not super structured, so we have a topic, but we don't have any questions. And we just go on that topic, spend an hour. But
Mhm.
people I'm talking to are business experts, so they could talk for hours about what they do and
Yeah.
how it's beneficial, and I'm able to keep up with them. So it's been great.
How do you manage that? Because sometimes you have people that used to be on camera or on a podcast, and they know how to deliver good answers.
Mhm.
Sometimes you get people that just talk. They talk a lot. So how do you manage those, very talkative kind of guests?
Okay, yeah, no, I mean definitely. Every guest is different. Some of the guests who are talkative are I like to let talk because they have great stories and they talk about things that are relevant. Um, and we do have an hour, so we're not rushing
True.
to
Hmm.
get through it. But on I guess I use StreamYard, so I have the
Hmm.
ability to, when people are talking, I'll come out of the screen, and if they're talking too much, then I'll come back in. So that's sort of a signal that I want to ask them another question.
How do you do that? I mean, so you leave the screen and then get back. How do they know that you
Um,
wanna?
sort of like Zoom when you turn your camera off. But
Right.
when you turn your camera off, they become full screen,
Right.
and then when you turn it
Ah.
back on, you're both on there next to each other.
But is that a signal? You tell them, hey, if I need a question, I'll do that. That is that something
Yeah,
you do beforehand?
yeah. Before I say, when we're talking, I'm going to come off screen sometimes so you can be full size. Don't get nervous.
Ah, got it.
Don't
Okay,
feel like you have to keep talking until I come back on. But also, if I want to come back on or have something to interject or want to ask you another question, I'll come on while you're talking, and then we'll sort of move from there.
got it. That's really smart. So you are both talking on the screen, and then only one, the active speaker, the active speaker view. So you only see them, and then once you want to join back and ask another question, you just join, and they'll be like, okay, here's Andrew. He's probably has a question. Yeah, that's really smart. You spoke about StreamYard. Tell me more about your tech stack. So, like, how can one have a live podcast? What is the stack you use?
Well, I think definitely StreamYard's a great platform because it allows you to do a lot more things independently. Because I produce the whole thing while I'm doing the show.
Right.
Um, And if you want to have a live podcast, it'll connect you. You can connect directly to YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook at the same time.
Oh,
So
okay.
my podcast, my live stream goes out on all three, as well as I'm connected to the metaverse at STEM City USA. So that my podcast goes out on their metaverse as well.
Wow, that's cool. I never heard about that. The podcast in the metaverse. How does that look like?
It's the same thing, but it's kind of cool because they have a little city, and then they have like a newsroom. So they have a little screen in the newsroom, and then the podcast go. People can walk in that room and sort of see the podcast on the screen in the newsroom as part of the
Wow,
city.
podcast in the metaverse. That's really cool. And then you told me that after you do the live, 1 month after that, you convert that live into a podcast, right?
Yes. So at this content recycling is key. So one of the great things and utilize Pod Squeeze a lot is, I'll do the live stream. So we'll do it live on all the channels. Then on LinkedIn, the next day we'll repost it
Hmm.
or reshare it. And then the next Tuesday, we do a LinkedIn newsletter based
Okay.
on the live stream. So I take content from Pod Squeeze. I actually have a format where, we take, we actually get the title based on the title that's one of the titles recommended from Pod Squeeze. And then what we do is, the image quotes. So we take an
Hmm.
image quote from Pod Squeeze and put that at the end of the newsletter. And then, within the newsletter, we'll take different content. And then what we'll do is when we do the post for the newsletter, we'll go back and take from Pod Squeeze either the
Wow.
Twitter or the Facebook and LinkedIn, you
Hmm. Posts,
recommendations,
right?
recommended
Hmm.
posts. So we reuse it there. And then a month later, it comes out as a voice podcast and it goes out to all the major podcast networks.
That's a really good way to repurpose your content using LinkedIn newsletter. I think that's, again, as we said before, it's a great network. LinkedIn, especially for your target, entrepreneur coaches. So, and then you can just repurpose the content and create something good, that people want actually to read. So, yeah, thank you for being a Podsqueeze power user. That's amazing.
Okay, no, it's been a game changer for me. So
That's
definitely.
that's what I love to hear. Um, let's go back to the podcast. So you have interviewed a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs. Tell me, what was the most funny or like out of the box story or business you have heard?
Okay, well, I've interviewed a lot of great people, but one episode that stands out was topic was geese poop for dollars, which was kind of interesting. But actually, our guest was the CFO of a school district, and one of the challenges they had was they had a lot of geese that pooped all over the grounds, and they used to have to pay to get rid of it, but he figured out and found some farmers that would use that to turn it into fertilizer. So they would actually pay him for the geese.
Wow.
So
Talking about, seeing an opportunity. That's crazy.
yeah,
So he's like, no, don't, don't. I can make money with that poop, and they'll be like, what? That's really interesting.
so
Um, and now a more, I guess, a philosophical question, which is, how did podcasting change your life?
I think one of the biggest things is communication skills that I mentioned. Um, in this age, you have to do lifelong learning. So I use that as one of my ways to stay current and continue to learn. And my visibility. I'm out a lot of places and people are like, oh, I know you. And, a lot of that's because of the content. We've never met or anything, but, you know, your content
Totally.
online can have a lot of reach,
Mhm.
especially if
Yeah.
it's quality.
Yeah. Talking to a camera, talking to a microphone, even if you're not talking with others, it's a great way for one to get better at talking, public talking. And um, yeah, I see that with my own podcast. There were the feeling words, right? As us and the likes, they they kind of disappear, or they get fewer, and you get better and better the more you do it. So I totally agree with that. Let's say someone is starting their live show right now, and you could give them one or two advice. What would you tell them?
I would say just do it. Even if it's terrible, you're going to get better. But also the key to success is consistency. So even if no one looks at it now, you know, over time, you're going to build, you're going to get better. And also you'll have, a lot of historical content that's valuable for repurposing in other ways.
Totally. I've been interviewing a lot of podcasters, and if there's something that is common between the advice is to be consistent. Everyone tells the same. Be consistent, show up, and gain some trust, gain the trust of your audience, because they are investing in your podcast, right? So if they're investing in your podcast, they expect an episode every X amount of time. And if you stop delivering that, you break that trust,
Hmm.
right? So I totally agree. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today in Lessons from a Podcaster. Tell us again the name of your podcast, and where can we find you?
Okay. Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. You can find the live streams on my LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube channel under Small Business Pro University on YouTube, or Andrew Frazier on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then, you can find the podcast part on, all the major channels. So we're
Perfect.
out of Spotify, and then they share it with a lot of other channels.
I will also link everything in the show notes of this episode. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing your time with us.
Okay. Thank you. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by PodSqueeze, an essential tool for podcasters that creates show notes, timestamps, clips, and more. Visit podsqueeze.com and use the code PODCASTER for 20% discount in the first 3 months. We release a new episode every Tuesday and Thursday. See you in the next episode of Lessons from a Podcaster.